Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello. Welcome to September. I want to start out by reading you this passage from this book, How We Are by Vincent Deary. And the reason why is going to be clear in a second when I start talking about the month. But yeah, this is a somewhat long passage that I'm going to read to you, so get comfy and enjoy. A walk in the park is a synonym for ease because the park knows how to walk. It does it for us. A good park anticipates our desire. Anticipated desire is the key to leisure. People have been paid and good money has been spent on figuring out what we are going to want to do. They care so that we don't have to. The good hotel, the theme park, the penny arcade, the pub, the cinema, all of them relieve our consciousness of the burden of worrying about what to do next. Think of those early difficult days with a new thing. A computer or a mobile phone, a guitar or a car, or a relationship in which you now feel comfortable. Learning the right moves, what they mean, how to, when to, what not to, where to, repeating and rehearsing, experimenting and getting it wrong, poise and grace and assurance were not qualities inbred in me, but were things to be acquired, painfully perhaps, and slowly, costing me many bitter moments. We want to rush past our bitter moments to a place of facility and ease. We want to be old at this new thing, but rushing won't do it. Only time and repetition bring ease. Then it's second nature. A walk in the park. Second nature. A telling phrase. So what's first? What comes naturally? A lot. It seems the snow is not so virgin after all. A whole host of routines are fitted as standard. The old and bleeding roads of the earth are emblazoned upon you. The vast and folded architecture of your brain and nerves are waiting for the world and have a strong presentiment of exactly how the world is going to be. Waiting for space, expecting time, ready for language, anticipating movement and other people, prepared for sex and violence, fear and loathing. As the parks and cities are public records of millennia of problem solving, of desire facilitated to the point of ease, so you are the repository of millions of years of very hard thinking about this world. You know the world already as your lungs know air and your kidneys water. Its weight and shape have determined your height and form. Its light has demanded your eyes. Its noises called for ears. Its food and water shaped your mouth, your teeth and guts. Its earth and roots and branches formed your grasping hands. You, the newest, shortest route between desire and fulfillment, are more intricately traversed by patterns and pathways than the entire world. Imagine the first attempts at hunger. Matter desperately maintaining its structure through stealing other matter, the elemental stirrings, the prehistory of hunger, clumsy, primitive molecular structures managing just to cannibalize the earth, to maintain and repeat themselves. Imagine hunger's first steps, desire's primal movements, life's beginnings. Look how good it's got at it. Look how good we are at eating now. at maintaining and reproducing the integrity of a staggeringly complex structure without even thinking about it. You just know. You were made for this world, by this world, of this world. You are the record, the embodiment of life's ceaseless desiring, written in tiny molecular hand, transcribed and translated into flesh from dust and water. Knowledge of 1 billion years of living in this world is folded up inside you, is you. You are the latest model, the most recent experiment in living. What a fantastic passage. So much of what Vincent Deary is talking about in this passage encapsulates to me not just the energy of Virgo, but also the energy of September. If you listen to the episode for August, August brings in new energy and with it an organic timeline shift. There are some important pieces of your soul, of your essence, and even of your ego that was making its way back to you. There was energy for you to burst out and to do what you want. And September is a different kind of month altogether. And the reason why I wanted to read this passage is to remind all of us that the process of facilitating ease and the process of integrating lessons that we've learned, whether that be soul wisdom or an understanding of ourselves as alive, ever unfolding beings in time, is a process. And process is hardly linear. It's not going from point A to point B. Often in the journey of going from point A to point B, there's a lot of unusual things, unexpected things that happen. And in September, we will see where all that work and where all the breakthrough is taking you. And there's something here about returning to the past. Some aspects of the past is coming back. Now, your perception creates a movie in your mind that you're replaying over and over again to make sense of your life. This is just how we are and who we are as humans. Our brains are smaller than the vastness of reality, and so the brain needs to create a set of rules that describes reality. And so our perception is not limited by these rules, but our thinking minds are. And so your trauma and your past, among other things, make up that mental model. And so as the past is coming back, naturally, there is this feeling that can arise of, did I make a mistake? Am I back where I was before? This is a necessary part of the process of integration. What did the passage say here? Let me reread a part of it that feels so relevant. He was talking about the early difficult days with a new thing. A computer or a mobile phone, a guitar or a car, a relationship in which you now feel comfortable. This idea of learning how to figure out the right moves is a process, right? And along with that process, it's like when you see children learning how to walk. Learning how to walk necessarily means that you will fall. You will not get good at walking right away. And so September is bringing training wheel vibes. And that can feel confronting because especially if we believe that we have leveled up, because we've never been in this level before, we've never been in this level of reality, in this stage of reality, we can carry this erroneous belief that there are no problems on the stage. If only I got to that stage, then everything will be great. Right? That is the kind of promised land that we usually try to manufacture in our heads. If only I start that creative practice, then I will never have to worry about feeling bad about myself again. If I make a certain amount of money, then I will never have to worry about money again. If I get into a certain kind of relationship, then I will never have to worry about XYZ again. Maybe, people saying certain things, asking me certain questions. I don't have to worry about that. And therefore, I will start to feel good about myself, right? So here's the thing. Every level of reality will have its own sets of challenges. And it's important to honor that there's nothing wrong with having challenges after having arrived at a new place on your path. And in fact, this is just the nature of it. This will continue to happen because this is just how it works. So one of the key themes here is integration, because progress is not linear, process is not linear, and progress happens within process. And September feels more like an energetic dip from August. There was a discernible high in the energy in August, and in September, that peak is dissipating as it should. It's transforming. Think about it as climbing a mountain. You climb the mountain, and then what do you need to do after you get to the peak? You need to climb down. It may even seem like the energy is gone. It may feel like that energy is now eaten up by some invisible trickster dragon. That does not mean that you're not moving forward. That simply means that the path forward is leading you into the woods, into the spiral, into the maze, where you need to have your wits about you as you navigate the forest of potential confusion. And the confusion it's important, if you're experiencing this confusion, to not make it mean that you are doing anything wrong. The confusion is simply a sign that you are in a new landscape, you're in a new terrain, you're learning the rules. And a major area where this will be happening is in relationships. There are major relational healing happening in September. Now, I don't use the word healing lightly. The word healing, often when people hear that, people think about curing. People think about reaching some sort of nirvana. That's not what healing is. Healing is acknowledging, recognizing the patterns, understanding your relationship with the patterns, and then getting to a space, a place within yourself where you have enough capacity to make a choice about the pattern without trying to control the pattern. Recognizing that the pattern itself is an archetype. The pattern itself is there for a reason. The pattern itself serves a purpose. The pattern is not this sin that you have to blot out, that you have to clean out from the world. The pattern simply is. And healing is about getting to a place where you realize you have creative agency. But in order to exercise that creative agency, a level of control needs to be relinquished. Creativity cannot happen when you are gripping your hands. Creativity needs to unfold in collaboration with all of life. And creativity is something that naturally arises. We create when we allow our nature to resonate with the nature of life around us. So the first piece in this relational healing is around healing codependent patterns. Most of you are getting really tired and really sick, and you actually can't even engage with this anymore. Your body, the current body that you have, has a level of sensitivity that is so heightened and so acute and aware, and so much of your energy is going into building a new reality, whatever that new reality is. And relationships that are built on anything other than total respect and reverence of each person's in the moment truth and their ability, their innate power to express that in whatever feels authentic to them in the moment. Any relationships that are built on anything other than that will just fall apart. You will either lose interest, you will find that you try to connect, but it just doesn't work, or you will not even be able to stand this person anymore. There is kind of a background frequency that we are leaving behind, which is really built upon the idea that we have to build a kind of communal, relational safety mechanism through sameness. That unless you and I believe the same thing, unless you and I like the same things or relate to things in the same ways, then we cannot have a relationship. That any sort of disagreement is a sign that you're not supportive of me or you don't care about me. And this frequency, this background thread of our existence is disintegrating at an unprecedented rate. It is just falling apart, free fall. And so you will find that anytime you try to kind of go back to that pattern of just trying to get your needs met through external ways, through insisting that other people act the way you think they should act, it's just going to cause so much dissonance in your system and in the other person's system that no connection can happen. It won't even feel good anymore. It'll feel like a violation to your system. And that's what healing looks like. Healing is not always pretty. Another way that major relational healing is happening is healing the habit of saying yes just so you can seem like a nice person. This is something a lot of us rely on in order to survive in society. And when you're being honest, when you say no, when you mean no, when you say yes, when you mean yes, there is energy available that life will pave the path forward. It will almost feel like the path forward comes through without your intervention at all. It's like life just showed up at your doorstep, knocked on your door, and because you've been clearing your energetic pipes, you will be able to see that, oh, this is the right next step for me. And on the other hand, the previous way of working through reality, which is by trying to project a certain image, trying to get your people to see you the way you want them to see you, is just going to not work. It's just going to not work, for lack of a better term. And this one feels funny, actually. This one feels more comedic than anything else. There's actually something kind of manipulative about that, right? Saying yes when you actually don't want to, just so you seem like a nice person, is in a way a really insidious way to move forward, to ensure that you are as safe as you can be. And yeah, this is another one of those things that will start crumbling apart. Or maybe if you got the early bird special, then you will see that this is already falling apart in your reality. Either you notice it so intensely when other people are doing this, and you just can't even stand it anymore, and so you become so aware when you do it, or you force yourself to do this and then you feel really like sick about yourself, and you can't even have an ounce of fun. And again, as you'll see, you're starting to see, hopefully, the picture that I'm painting here, right? That this particular process of healing is going to look like eating the food that you used to like, but that your body can't really process anymore now. You're going to start to feel sick about it, right? What used to feel like this amazing guilty pleasure is now feeling like literal toxin in your body. And relationships are very similar because in some ways, we are energetic beings and we are always ingesting and digesting and offering our energies to one another. And as we move from a more mental universe or a more mental program, let's just say, into a more energetic program, you'll start to feel when something is done from a place of crunchiness, from a place of weird, trying to control each other's behavior place, and you'll just want to spit it back out. And the last phase, actually not the last, I have two more. The next one is healing from the habit of making up stories and assumptions about other people's feelings and experiences. Now, we've all experienced this, right? You say something and then you see that it provokes something in the other person. You perceive the other person to have an experience. And very often, the conditioning here is for us to get stuck in this loop of, did I do something wrong? Should I have said that differently? Blah, blah, blah. And instead, what could be a really nice practice here, what I would highly recommend, is to ask the other person, hey, what's going on? Do you want to talk to me about it? Or if that doesn't feel accessible to you, ask yourself, what is happening within me? Now, ideally, you want to do both at the same time. You want to have a relational practice of talking to the other person, checking in with them, and also at the same time, really tuning into your own experience and letting yourself have a different experience than the other person. You don't know people's experiences, and the act of quickly deciding what the other person's experience is very often a really funny feature of the ego that distracts us from really understanding and knowing our own truth. And somehow this is again so pervasive because it's so socially sanctioned. Somehow it's okay to be making up stories about other people or to adjust our behavior based on what we think the other person is feeling. So this month, focus on yourself. If you say something or you do something that provokes a response in other people, use that as an opportunity to ask yourself, am I acting in integrity with my values? What do I think about the words that I just said? What do I think about my actions? Learn to see yourself and your actions through the lens of your own truth in that moment. This can be really uncomfortable. It's very hard to look into ourselves so directly, especially when there's relational noise. There's an illusion, I think, that it's easy to see our own stuff when, say, we're journaling, right? Or when we're doing something on our own. That's not actually true, because it's always challenging to see yourself anyway. But there's an added layer of complexity when you kind of go out of your own experience and go into your idea of what other people are experiencing. Right? It became then practically impossible for you to know what it is that you're experiencing. So again, relationships that are built on a lack of awareness of your own experiences and your own truth will also fall away, right? Similar to how earlier we talked about how relationships built on anything other than total respect and reverence for each other's moment by moment truth will start to not be exciting anymore and will start to not have energy. Similarly, when you continue to, for lack of a better term, abandon your own experiences, these relationships will also fall away because the truth is obscured there. And when there's no truth, true resonance cannot happen and cannot be felt. The last piece here is healing from getting really down on yourself for not achieving what you think you need to achieve, what you think other people want you to achieve, what you think looks cool to other people, right? And then getting stuck in the cycle of humiliating and punishing yourself and thinking that you are not good enough. Some of you were raised to be very ambitious people. You were trained to compartmentalize your feelings, your inner truth, your intuition, and your body's knowings as a child. Many of you are getting to a point where you can't do that anymore. The compartmentalization is getting so painful that you will need to find a way to collaborate and really work with your emotions, your intuition, your body knowing. You're literally getting to a point where your spirit team, your body, everything around you and inside of you will just not let you do that stuff anymore. So the easiest thing to do here and the most efficient, effective thing to do is to just stop doing it. Don't compartmentalize your feelings. Feel it. Feel it. Feel your intuition speaking to you. Explore it, even if it feels like the craziest thing. Or, a lot of the times, the experience of hearing your intuition speak to you is really not that weird, actually. It's just weird because it's different than your habitual pattern. Again, in the passage I read in the beginning, he was talking about the ways that the beginnings were challenging, right? That whenever there's a new thing happening, that thing will be, it has its like starts and stops, right? So similarly here, as you are allowing more of you to come back online, you'll find that things feel distorted. Things feel slower, things feel less effective. Maybe things that used to bring you a lot of thrill is no longer exciting for you. Or maybe you're just tired. You find yourself tired when you look at the things that you have to do, the conversations you need to have. It's just kind of like it loses its taste and its appeal. So this is a sign of progress, and I want you to really take the time to track that and to recognize it as progress, to continue to redefine what success means for you at this time in your life, right? And I don't just mean external success, I also mean internal success. And then to appreciate what you've accomplished. Give yourself some credit. The process of life, again, is nonlinear. It will bring confusion, disappointment, unpleasant surprises, but there's also support, especially from the unseen realm and from the non-human realm, including nature, including the earth itself. When I tuned into September, I was getting this visual of a bunch of architects huddling over a table, discussing and changing their designs together, drawing new sketches, scrapping old ones. There's an energy of renovation here. There's an energy of revitalization. And there's also collaboration, even if it's only seemingly with the unseen or with the non-human. And my sense is that really tapping into these resources and trusting our awareness to clock this is going to be really helpful and supportive for us as we move through the month. Okay, so the last piece I want to share here before we get into the nitty-gritty of the astrology is to read you another passage. And this is from Kim Kranz's The Wild Unknown Alchemy Guidebook. And the reason why I want to read this passage is because the archetype that feels important to remind ourselves about or to kind of keep in our consciousness is the archetype of the alchemist. And I want to read a couple passages. One is titled The Awakening Alchemist, and the other one is titled The Future Alchemist. So this is The Awakening Alchemist. One of the first signs that alchemy is awakening within an individual is that the student begins to take things less personally. Instead, they sense that the events of their life are processes in nature that must happen for growth. They see patterns in nature that mimic their own situations. They become part of the cosmic whole rather than the center of it. They notice the elements in every situation: healing, cooling, dulling, releasing. This awareness builds slowly but surely. As it occurs, reverence for the ingredients and for the work increase. Newfound feelings of awe and inspiration glimmer in the student's ear, even during difficult times. This leads to further study, and further study leads to more acceptance and revelation. When the awakening alchemist reaches this phase, the heat of transformation sustains them in their growth. The warmth spirals outward, serving others and the world. What was base becomes noble. And the other passage is from The Future Alchemist. It is easy to mistake the art of alchemy as esoteric research that happened long ago. Men in medieval times tinkering with glass jars in search of remedies for eternal life and formulas for gold. Let that vision or any preconceived notion or vision dissolve. Alchemy is happening right now, and it will carry us into the future. This requires us to reclaim alchemy's insistence on diversity, curiosity, multiplicity, nature, and the imagination. The elements surround us. They shape our destinies. Through them, the stories of our lives unfold. The spirit of the alchemist is carried within the hearts of those who notice the elemental phenomena of existence, those who sense the vitality of the world and who seek to live in alignment with that vitality. We become future alchemists by rising each morning to the work in front of us, knowing the sacred is in the mundane and vice versa. With kindness and reverence, we tend to the elements of today, and by doing so, serve tomorrow. Clap, clap. That was such a beautiful passage. Thank you, Kim Kranz. So, let's see. Let's get to the astrology. Okay. On September 1st, which is the time when I'm going to be releasing this episode, Saturn re-enters Pisces. So Saturn has been spending some time in Aries, which it's going to be in the next few years. But Saturn is making its last transit in Pisces. And this is kind of a long transit. 5 months, 6 months, something like that. Until February 13th, where Saturn finally re-enters Aries. So some of the themes that are relevant here is there's an energy of reminiscing, of familiar territory, of reprise. If you have listened to these old records, right, they sometimes have a previous track coming back towards the end of the record. So there's that energy. There's a dip back into the ocean of deep psyche. And this is a source of both inspiration and dread for a lot of us, right? There's this energy of like drudging things back up, the skeletons come out of the closet, etc., etc. So I envision that whatever it is that you've been working through since March 2023 is going to make its reappearance. Perhaps Saturn in Pisces brought a level of fear or a level of, I don't really know what I'm even doing with my life. I'm confused. I think the experience of nihilism is an energy that I kind of associate with Saturn in Pisces. Saturn in Pisces ultimately is about deeper surrender. And surrender means that you also let go of your own idea of what surrender even means. That sometimes the deepest form of surrender could be getting into action. That you've been essentially, this is something that I think happens to a lot of mystics. We get comfortable staring into the void. We get comfortable with our relationship with the mystery, that actually we stop talking to the mystery. We think that talking to the mystery looks a certain way when it's actually just a comfort zone thing for us, right? We get used to not knowing. The other day I heard this term, addiction to not knowing. And I thought that really, I felt called out. I felt attacked. Because a lot of us, especially when we are creative, intuitive people, it's easy for us to commune with the spirit and with our imagination, to commune with the frequency, and really giving ourselves permission to surrender into what is actually needed, what we're actually being invited to, rather than what we think we want to be invited to, is a running theme throughout Saturn being in Pisces. On September 2nd, Mercury enters Virgo, and Mercury is at home in Virgo. Mercury is also exalted in Virgo. Mercury is great in Virgo. And it's also, maybe unfortunately, a very speedy transit. By the 18th, I believe, Mercury will already have left Virgo into Libra. And Mercury in Virgo facilitates precision. in communication, and also a kind of facility for exchange and dialogue and concerted effort when it comes to the mental realm and also the execution realm, because let's not forget Virgo is an earth sign, right? So this is a really great transit for research, for fact checking, for making sure that all of your ducks are lined up. And it's also a great transit for investigating old beliefs on a cognitive level and then allowing your body to respond from present moment awareness as a way to dissolve and reconfigure some of these old beliefs. Beliefs don't just take hold on us on a mental level, right? Beliefs are not a mental thing. Beliefs are postures. They impact how we run our energy. They impact how we hold our bodies in space. And so beliefs are cellular in nature. And Mercury in Virgo is such a beautiful transit for beginning to create new patterns. And it doesn't even have to be something that you do super consciously. It can be something that you do just by allowing yourself to respond to the moment, by letting yourself not be burdened by stories of how you need to respond in order to get a certain outcome. On September 3rd, Mercury squares Uranus in Gemini. Now, in my opinion, the first aspect that a transit has, so for example, in this case, Mercury entering Virgo, right? For that window of time when Mercury is in Virgo, the first aspect that it's making to another planet is always significant. So Mercury in Virgo immediately faced a challenge from Uranus in Gemini. The square represents a challenge, it represents a disagreement, and the need to slow down, to find consensus, or if not consensus, to allow both parties to get what they want eventually in their own ways. Now, Mercury and Uranus are both trickster archetypes. Mercury feels more like a day-to-day personal trickster. Uranus feels more like this archetypal trickster, right? Tricksters who really are here to shake things up so that authenticity can emerge. It's like, have you ever had this moment of cracking a joke in front of a friend? Especially, certain people are really, they're really good at like keeping themselves contained within a certain range of expression. They may seem really stoic, or they may seem really put together, and then you crack a joke and then you hear them laugh uncontrollably. and that to me is kind of the Uranus energy, right? Both Mercury and Uranus they want to move, they want to initiate that kind of process in reality. And so this is not altogether a difficult transit, in my opinion, because Virgo and Gemini are both ruled by Mercury. So there is still kind of a mercurial energy here. It's just a lively discussion that maybe have a little bit of tension along the way. Okay, on the same day, we have Jupiter in Cancer trining the North Node in Pisces. The key word here is nourishment, and this is a Jupiter in Cancer keyword. A reminder I would like to give for this specific, because Jupiter is going to play a very important role throughout the transit this month. There's a lot of things that are kind of up in the air. A lot of things are needing to be rearranged and reconfigured in order for whatever wants to emerge to come up, right? There is kind of a movement quality to September. But what is so exciting to me is the prominence of Jupiter in Cancer. Now, Jupiter in Cancer, obviously, is making a sextile to all of the planets in, at least by sign, all the planets in Virgo, right? And so already there's support, already there's friendly energy there. Now, something to remember with this transit is receiving and giving are not necessarily separate acts, right? In giving, you receive. In receiving, you also give. You are always both the receiver and the giver. Humans are entangled creatures. We are always in energetic exchange with one another and with the world around us. We, in fact, live inside of a loop, right? The borders of possessions and property are really man-made. And so what's important to remember here is this is not a transit to be careless about your giving. It's never really a transit to be careless about your giving, but it's also not a transit to be stingy. It's not a transit to mentally try to map out, okay, if I give this much, is this person going to give back this much? And this is, again, going back to what I was saying earlier about codependent patterns, because that's another very tricky, somewhat obscured way that codependent pattern can come up, right? Codependency is basically going outside of yourself, checking in with the other person's experience in order to be able to control reality, right? So instead here, really check in with what you want to receive and what you want to get. And with the things you want to receive, make clear requests. And the things that you want to get, give freely, give generously. Don't hold back and don't overgive either. On September 4th, we have Mars in Libra squaring Jupiter in Cancer. Like I said earlier, squares represent challenges, and Mars specifically represent confrontation. Because Mars is in detriment, the sting here may be a little bit less intense. And that also is factoring in the fact that Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, right? So we have here Mars in detriment in Libra and Jupiter exalted in Cancer. So Jupiter is really having the upper hand here. And Mars is rather weakened. And that is probably not an altogether bad thing. This particular transit is making me think about, you know, that experience when someone gives you something really nice, when someone gives you something that you have maybe been wanting or that you've been pining for, longing for a while. Usually there are two kinds of people, right? With two different kinds of responses here. One kind of response is the kind of person who gets so excited and so grateful, you know, and starts crying, right? And then the other person is the kind of person who contracts when they receive something beautiful, when they receive a gift. They contract, they get freaked out, right? And so this transit is making me think of that. This transit is making me think of the experience of contracting when you're receiving something beautiful. That experience or that sentiment, that feeling of like, I don't know what to do because this person is so nice. Like, right? And yeah, I think this is potentially a very cute, although confronting transit. This will really show us where we are clasping our hands, right? Where our fingers are gripping super tight and we're not able to allow the creative energy to flow through us. And this is such a beautiful opportunity to see, oh yeah, that is a pattern that I do. That is a pattern I engage in. And in bringing in, my recommendation is to bring a little bit of compassion and humor into this and see how that softens the edges a little bit. Moving on to September 7th, we have the total lunar eclipse. This is a full moon in 15 degrees Pisces. So this is a big one. Let's talk more about it. Sun, Mercury, and the South Node is going to be in Virgo, all within 8 degrees of one another. And opposite from that, we have the Moon very closely conjoining the South Node in Pisces and also co-present with Saturn. It's a bit of a wider conjunction, but it's still in the same sign as Saturn. And what is significant here is the Moon is going to be in a trine with Jupiter. And because the Moon is in Pisces, the Moon is ruled by Jupiter, right? So eclipses are not usually fun. I've actually spoken about the eclipses quite a few times on this podcast. If you just Google eclipse for this podcast, I'm sure you'll find something. And eclipses, to be brief and succinct about it, eclipses point to loss of illumination. Eclipses involve both the sun and the moon and also Earth, right? And so this idea of one of the luminaries, the planet in the sky that we can see consistently being blocked out because of its positioning, is a symbology for the fact that we can't fully see, and therefore we are more sensitive to the fact that we don't have control in the situation. This one specifically speaks to both excess and assistance. Whenever a planet is close to the North Node, it's close to the head of the dragon, right? In Vedic mythology, the North Node is Rahu, and Rahu is the head of the dragon that's severed from its tail. And so there's this always hungry quality to the North Node. And so the moon is very close to the North Node and experiencing this excess, right? Moon in Pisces loves being imaginative. Moon in Pisces loves seeing the potential in things. And Moon in Pisces can get a little carried away in fantasy land, a little bit. Moon in Pisces can get so wrapped up in how everything is connected to everything else, essentially losing the plot. And this is going to be true for this particular lunar eclipse in terms of the energy. And also because of that Jupiter trine, it's like Jupiter is able to see the moon and is able to give support, both on a moral level and on a tangible level. The moon is like, right? A little bit ungrounded and kind of moving around and getting lost in the sauce. But Jupiter is kind of looking over to the moon and being like, I got you, right? Whenever you are a little bit lost, I got you. So it's sweet. I think there's a lot of potential for this particular transit for emotional release. So asking yourself, what am I holding on to in my emotional body? What emotions am I not letting myself feel? Can be extremely potent because there's space here for that emotional release to really happen if you bring a little bit of consciousness around it. And also there's potential for psychic release here too. If there are things, relationships, jobs that you are ready to part with, the North Node will aggravate your visioning, right? Your need to care for yourself through ingesting and being with possibilities so that you can have enough juice to kind of let things go. This is not a subtle energy at all. It will be very obvious what you are working with. Last thing I want to mention here about the eclipses in general, and I think this is particularly relevant because we are in eclipse season, is if there are decisions that you have to make consciously, if you haven't premeditated before, I would highly recommend waiting until the eclipse season is over. Because of that lack of illumination, right, it is easy to act without having all the information, without having all the pieces in place there. So it will likely behoove you to be a little patient, especially in situations where patience is possible, right? If it's not completely unbearable, if it's not life-threatening, It might be a good idea to wait until the eclipses are over, maybe get some outside counsel, and then make the decision when you are ready on the other side of it. On the 10th to the 13th of September, we have a bunch of Sun and Mercury related events. So we have the Sun in Virgo conjoining the South Node, opposing the North Node, and then Mercury does the same thing, says hello to the South Node, or conjoins the South Node and opposes the North Node. And then we have Sun and Mercury sextiling Jupiter in Cancer, and Mercury conjoining the Sun in Virgo. Essentially, we have a Mercury cazimi. So the phrase that came up here is mental control. Mercury in Virgo loves to know things. Mercury in Virgo loves not just to know, but to know the answer, right? But with the influence and the energy, the sauce that the South Node produces, the South Node is the tail of the dragon, right? So it's always releasing in a compulsive way. The precision and the accuracy of Mercury in Virgo's knowing is not, I don't think that it's about Mercury in Virgo completely losing its power. That's not what's going on in my sight here. I think what's going to happen is that the accuracy and the precision of that knowing will actually depend on the ability to surrender. So the more deeply you surrender to the moment, the more you allow yourself to get grounded and to listen to what is being asked of you, the more relaxed you are into allowing things to be precisely what they need to be, the more you can receive and hold the knowing, and maybe even to make some moves toward realizing that knowing. The knowing will come, the solution will come, especially with that sextile to Jupiter and with the Mercury cazimi event, but you will have to trust the process here. This is not one of those situations where you will know all the details and then you can execute seamlessly without any kind of hiccups or without any kind of spiritual alchemical process that you have to go through internally. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to get to the other side. Okay, on the 15th, we have Venus in Leo sextiling Mars in Libra. Now, all of the other transits that are happening this month has this kind of gravitas to it, right? We're in the middle of eclipse season, right? We have all this Virgo, Pisces stuff, which to me, Virgo and Pisces definitely have playful moments, but generally, Virgo and Pisces, I'm a Virgo rising, Pisces sun. Virgo and Pisces can be very serious, and even when it comes with a level of humor or a level of seeming levity, here's the trick, right? When you really tune in to individuals with strong Virgo and Pisces placements, even when they seem to not take themselves so seriously or they seem to have a kind of flow to them, if you really tune in to their essence, there's something very serious about them. Virgo is really oriented towards service, right? And Pisces is really oriented towards consciousness and deeper knowing. Pisces wants to transcend beyond the mundane, and Virgo understands that the sacred is in the mundane, right? And both of them working together in transit is bringing this very spiritual experience. And spiritual experiences are often, packaged neatly with a bow, and there's this, it's put in a box, it's sold as a retreat, and it's like, get your wellness for 3333, right? Something like that. But the truth is, Virgo and Pisces transits can be very serious, and they really bring this existential quality to it. Now, the reason why I preface the Venus and Mars sextile with that is because this is the exact opposite of that. Now, Venus and Mars, right? With Venus, the ruler of Mars in Libra, right, being in Leo, is such a juicy, heated, sexy transit. This is a very creative transit. And because it's a sextile, it requires consciousness, maybe even a little bit of preparation to get going. It needs a little bit of foreplay, you know? So here's my recommendation. Plan an artist date for yourself or with a loved one, platonic or romantic, doesn't really matter, right? But plan something creative to do. Go somewhere, replenish your creative cup, see a movie that inspires you, block out some space to listen to music that you love. Really lavish yourself here. Give yourself permission to play, give yourself permission to show off a little bit. Venus in Leo really loves to show off and to have a little bit of that razzle dazzle, right? And Mars in Libra, especially ruled by this Venus, can really get behind that. So give it something to do and really have fun with this transit. On the 17th, we're back in Virgo and Pisces land. We have Mercury in Virgo opposing Saturn in Pisces. And to me, this transit feels like judgments towards the places in our lives where we maybe haven't cracked the code or we haven't found the answers, but the reality is that there are no answers available, or there's no one answer, right? This particular transit is bringing like a vibe of forcing towards knowing, towards understanding, towards having a strategy, when the only thing actually available is awareness and consciousness. If this transit feels crunchy, you may want to ask yourself, am I forcing myself to know the answers before I'm ready to live into the questions? Maybe the answer is yes. I am very familiar with this process as a very Virgo Pisces person. It's really easy with this kind of transit and the energies that are involved here to get so wrapped up in trying to find a solution, especially thinking about Mercury being exalted in Virgo while still having that South Node influence, right? Opposing Saturn. It's literally like Mercury, looking straight at Saturn and kind of like in a yelly tone being like, tell me what the plan is. We need to have a plan, right? And that energy is not conducive. It's not conducive. So my recommendation is to make this transit fun. So instead of making it mean that there's something wrong with you, that you don't have the answer or you don't have understanding or strategy available, ask this transit to really show you where you may enjoy having a little bit more structure. For example, you may not fully know what to do in the next 5 years of your endeavor, or you may have a creative project that you may not totally know how to get to the finish line, right? But there may be aspects of the things that you are already doing that can benefit from you getting a little bit clearer about what are the steps that I usually do, right? Maybe, like for example, I'm thinking about this podcast for me as an example. I've created a lot of episodes for this podcast. I know how to create a podcast episode, right? What I don't usually do is I don't usually write out the steps for me to create the podcast episodes. So you can consider doing something like that, right? You can consider, is there any way that if I already know I'm going to be doing this anyway, maybe I can list out the steps to lighten some of the cognitive load that I experience when I'm doing this. So basically what I'm trying to say here is notice places where you are trying to have more answers than what is available. And ask yourself, the advice I would give here is to not go into complete avoidance or complete relaxation, but rather to ask yourself if there's anything you can do to make your life a little bit easier here. Okay, the next transit on the 18th to 19th is Mercury leaving Virgo and moving into Libra. This is big because Mercury is entering that zone where Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto are having a conversation with one another. So this is kind of a background frequency that has been happening and that will be happening for some time. But we are in a moment where specifically Uranus and Pluto are very, very close to one another, right? And actually Neptune as well. I'm not going to leave out Neptune there. Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto are in very close aspects in this moment. And so Neptune in Aries brings confused action or no action altogether. Neptune in Aries is like, what are we supposed to do energy? Or what can we do in like an exasperated tone energy, right? These are kind of the slogan of Neptune in Aries. Neptune in Aries shows us or wants to teach us where we actually have power, but where that power may not be accessed through brute force. That, again, similar to what I've been saying about the South Node in Pisces, Neptune in Aries gives a slightly different vibe, but similar message, right? Of essentially, where are you giving your power away? Where can you try creative things without being super detached with what the outcome is going to be? Now, Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius are about challenges to how we think and see reality. These transits ask, what even is reality? What do we mean when we say the world? Whose world, right? Whose perspectives? The world is a big place. And especially those of us who are trained to think in this Eurocentric way, we tend to believe that there's only one world or only one universe, right? This is very, very dominant in a lot of supremacist culture. And it makes sense because the idea is always to colonize, is always to rule, is always to control, is always to know so we can control, right? Now we know that the idea of control is an illusion, but let's just be real. We can't even control our own lives, right? We can't even control our own bodies, let alone other people. On a micro level, so many people are challenging their own narratives. If you are someone who really pride yourself in working really hard, you might have found that with this transit, you're not able to force yourself in that way anymore. You have to find a different way. If you really pride yourself in being someone who's very chill, who doesn't take things too seriously, you may be called to really, hit the brake, right? Or is that right? I don't drive a car, as you can see. Hit the pedal, hit the gas, is what I'm trying to say. You may be asked to accelerate a little bit, right? So Mercury really highlights these dynamics and brings conversations to these experiences. On the 19th, also Venus enters Virgo. This is a place where Venus is in fall. And on the 20th, Venus squares Uranus in Gemini. Again, this mirrors that movement that Mercury had when Mercury entered Virgo and then squares Uranus, right? And Venus is fortunately ruled by Mercury in Libra, which means they're in mutual reception to one another because Venus's home is, Libra is one of Venus's home and Virgo is one of Mercury's homes. And so they're able to collaborate and connect with one another. What I would recommend, rather than me kind of going deeper into Venus and Virgo here, is I created an episode dedicated specifically to Venus and Virgo that I would recommend you check out because I think it's really beautiful. It's called Love in Process, It's episode 166. And I want you to use that to resource yourself. Go back to the episode if that feels exciting to you, and really resource yourself. I was really talking about it from a perspective of the archetype itself. So you don't have to have Venus in Virgo to listen to that. Okay, from the 21st to the 24th, there's a bunch of sun stuff being highlighted here. We have a partial solar eclipse in Virgo on the 21st. We have the sun in Virgo opposing Saturn in Pisces, right? On the 22nd, Mars enters Scorpio, the sun enters Libra. And then on the 23rd, the sun in Libra opposes Neptune in Aries, trines Uranus in Gemini, and then on the 24th, it trines Pluto in Aquarius. So the sun here is doing something very similar to what Mercury just did, right? Of activating that conversation between Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. Now, if you are getting a little bit freaked out just hearing me say all of this, you're right. This feels like really intense. I think this last week or so of Virgo is pretty intense energetically. I don't predict stuff because that's not a thing I'm interested in, but if I were to do a prediction, I think this is a time where big kind of geopolitical stuff can happen. I mean, they've been happening, but I think there's a bit of a crescendo here that could happen, especially with this being eclipse season. It's also a solar eclipse, which is a new moon, rather than the lunar eclipse, which is a full moon. And in my opinion, sometimes the solar eclipse can be a little bit more annoying because the nature of eclipses, as we have talked about, is already a little bit less illuminated, right? There's less clarity when we are looking at eclipses. And add to that kind of the new moon vibe, where, the new moon is literally like when you go out, you can't see anything, right? There's blockage here. And to me, the vibe here is there's lots of crunchy feelings coming up, potentially lots of critical inner voices. And so all the stuff that I was talking about with regards to relational healing is going to be really relevant at this moment, right? With Venus entering Virgo, and then this all this eclipse stuff happening, activating the all these outer planets, right? It's not exactly the most fun transit from my perspective. My advice is to practice. Again, the emphasis here is on practice, so you don't need to be perfect at this, but just try, right? Try putting on the lens of this is happening for me instead of this is happening to me. Eclipses also bring things to us. You are really asked to eclipse within, and so, remember how earlier I said also there may be setbacks. This could be it, and that's okay, right? The important thing, okay, so I think this is the only silver lining that I can kind of find with this transit, is that with mutable signs, usually when plans are thwarted, when there's something that you want that didn't happen, there's actually something that you are spared from. There's actually kind of a blessing in disguise thing happening here. Mind you, as a caveat, I'm a hopeless optimist. So the work here is to tend to what hurts, to surround yourself with people and with beings that can make you feel better, and then to set an intention to receive more insights, more inspiration, more ideas from what can feel like a tragedy unfolding from you. Right? And again, because this is a practice, don't worry about it being perfect. You are absolutely still allowed to have your own feelings and emotions and experiences. And also, just remember that whenever you are doing something or you're in an unusual territory, the second time, the third time you try things out may be infinitely better than the first. So just know that plans getting thwarted is really not a problem. This is just on par for the course when it comes to eclipses. The last transit is on the 24th. We have Mars in Scorpio squaring Pluto in Aquarius. This is again a classically challenging aspect. We actually started off the year with a Mars-Pluto aspect, which is Mars retrograde in Leo, opposing Pluto in Aquarius. This one is very different, right? Because now Mars is back in a kind of challenging stance to Pluto. But Mars has all their tools, right? Mars is resourced in Scorpio. This, to put bluntly, is power struggle energy, right? So expect that some things might be put to a halt, right? That there may be kind of delays or challenges, confrontations. The energetic temperature will rise. It might be really easy for people to get kind of nasty or like feisty, right? And so my recommendation for you, especially because you're listening to this ahead of time, is to adjust accordingly. Just know that that last week of September brings a lot of crunchiness. And so the two antidotes I will propose to you is first to really care for your body, really resource yourself here. Don't skimp out on, like, drink your water, right? Get food, get enough rest. Try to have fun. If nature is accessible to you, resource yourself from that, right? And the other thing I would also recommend is to have a creative practice, meaning something you can go to regularly that is kind of a ritual that helps you feel inspired, that helps you fill your cup. Okay, so that is it. I know there's a lot of information there. I hope this was useful for you. I hope it's fun to listen to. If you get to this point, you're probably having fun as much as I am. And yeah, let me see if there's any announcements here. I still have space for coaching and mentorship. So those of you who would like to work with me longer term, I work with people on a 3-month basis. I would love to work with you. My clients and mentees work on various things. Some people work to learn astrology. Some are working on cultivating energy healing skills for themselves and to become a practitioner for others. And also I have coaching clients who basically are here to more deeply understand their own process, more deeply understand what is authentic to them, and maybe in a moment of needing deeper support. So if that calls to you, I would love to work with you. And yeah, I think that's it. I hope you take care of yourself during this month of September. And if things feel crunchy, if things feel hard, just know that this episode is here for you. If you find encouragement, resourcing from this episode, you can always return to this. And yeah, throughout the month, I'll have other conversations, I'll have other episodes that will hopefully resource you as well. Okay, I am sending you so much love, and I hope you have a beautiful month. Take care.